Welcome to the Happy Soul Podcast. My name is Melissa, and this is Sammy. We are diving deep into conversations that connect and inspire. Stories of resilience, triumph, and transformation. Stories that take us to the heart of human connection. Please note that opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect those of this podcast. Please listen with your kindness and an open mind. Each story shared is authentic and vulnerable. Let's embrace our differences with empathy, knowing every voice enriches us. Together, let's cultivate a community of respect and curiosity. Thank you for listening. Now sit back, relax, and prepare to be inspired.
Welcome to the Happy Soul Podcast, everybody. Today we are here with Jono and Taryn Tycholis. We met when you were very, very pregnant with your oldest, so 9 years ago. And it's your first baby, and I just so vividly remember meeting you when you were super pregnant, introduced by friends. And I remember some point in time in early meeting you guys, you were talking about some one-day goals, and they were some of them were very specific, and some of them were kind of like broad. I feel like this what we're talking about today was more like a one day we're going to go drive around and tour around the States. It wasn't specific. It was like, that's a goal. And now it's here and it's happening. And I'm super excited to talk to you guys about this, but basically life happened. You guys were living life. Taryn, you were staying home with the kids. Jono, I know you were working on being home as much as possible as well. And then COVID hit and you guys decided to buy a bus. And it was, from what I understand, a very like kind of not unthought about decision, but it was a pretty quick decision. Is that right?
Pretty quick. I'd say a few months.
Yeah.
Direction.
And so obviously we watched you guys build your bus from afar, like via Instagram, because that's what everyone was doing, was watching people live life via Instagram at the time. But I remember a conversation with you, Taryn, and it has stuck with me so strongly. I was right before you guys went on your trip, and we were talking about goals and living goals and ideas. And you said essentially, we kept saying to ourselves, when we hit X goal, whatever X goal is, that's when we get to go live this life. We have to hit this goal first, and then we can go live this life. And COVID hit, and we actually sat down and did the math, and we realized we don't have to wait. We can actually do this right now. There's no reason to wait. And I remember you saying that because I feel like that's what a lot of people miss, is that whole, oh, what can I actually do right now? And actually breaking down the math of whatever it is they're looking to do. And I remember that conversation so vividly in your living room talking about that. And it was like 3 weeks later, you guys left on your first trip to go bus around the States for 6 months in your bus that you guys had built by hand.
Yeah.
So I just love that. And so Taryn, I don't know if you recall that conversation at all, but can you guys, both of you, maybe speak on what that conversation was like between the two of you, of like when you realized, oh heck, why are we waiting for XYZ? We could do this now. What was that like?
Yeah. Well, to just, rewind to like how this goal started. We did, like you said, Sam, we always had this dream. Like I've always wanted to tour North America, like by motorhome. That was sort of the dream. It's like, we love road trips. Even our like honeymoon, that was one of our dreams, was to go down the whole West Coast, all the way down to California. At the time, we were in debt when we got married. That's coming up 15 years ago, pretty crazy. And we did not have money to do road trips like that. So kind of put that as like, wrote it down, and that is something we're going to work towards. So we always had like this idea, like, oh yeah, maybe we'll get a motorhome one day. Like you said, one day goals. And as you had said, COVID did hit. And I think a lot of us at that time you were trying to like not focus on everything that was crazy around you, and just like, we wanted to just dig into something. And so we started like, we went motorhome shopping at the time, didn't we?
No, there's a piece of hindsight. I actually wish we'd figured this out sooner.
Yeah.
Because we had to sit in our home, and wait for them to let us out.
Yeah, the first bit of it.
To a certain degree. And it's like, I wish we would have
started on it sooner.
I kind of wish we had this idea sooner. Although I guess there were some things like, it was like, it's finances, but it's mostly actually logistics. And, like the onset of something like Starlink, being able to have great internet anywhere, even where you don't have cell service. Like, there's just certain things that were slowly coming to be, and we hit it like right when they became available. And so it facilitated our ability to do things without like having to like, without it being super complicated. And so I think it is what it is, but I wish I wish things had come together sooner, but it just, it was what it was. But yeah,
that's sort of why we started like looking, because we were like, oh my gosh, maybe, like you said, Sammy, we could do this sooner than we thought. And so then we, because of Starlink and then the situation in our life,
it's not just because of that.
No, but
like,
that
was like helpful.
Yeah, and we were doing we started doing just how we had up to that point, like we started doing things more virtually and remotely, and we're like, wow, we don't have to be defined by just a place anymore. We actually can go beyond where we live. And so we started looking at motorhomes, and yeah, that was in like the winter of, was that 2020? Yeah, it was about, because we bought the bus March of 2021.
Things were.
Yeah, yeah, I know dates. So it was like, yeah, it was December 2020, and we were shopping around for motorhomes and like looking what was on the market. But at the time, RVs like went way up in price. Like they were, because everybody was like trying to like do camping and be outside. And so we were looking at the prices of motorhomes. And I think that's what always set by Sammy. We didn't think we could do this dream at sooner because of the budget. Like it was a lot of the finances. It was crazy.
It was a big upfront to buy something that would be, you know, acceptable in our eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And then because they primarily build what would be big enough for a family of 5, they primarily build it for old people. So not only does it look like it's built for old people, functionally it's also typically built for old people. And some people are like, oh, well, some of them have bunks. Yeah, they might have like 1 or 2 bunks, or 2. You know, usually much like kids. Most houses are built now, they expect you to only have, whoever they are, expect you to only have 2 kids. And so everything, I mean, I even think like one of the houses that we lived in, it was like, they did not want you to have more than 2 kids in this house. And it was the same thing. If there was bunks, that was the case. And then you'd have to, you know, like always put your table down and make a bed every single day. And we're like, okay, so basically whatever we buy, whether it's old or new, it's going to be a gut job.
Yep.
And we're going to have to completely renovate it so it doesn't look like, because we also appreciate aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not just about functionality. We want to like actually enjoy a space. It to like be something that is appealing to us. The, you know, like, I don't know if it's the art behind it, it's the architecture or the design, whatever. That does matter to us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, we didn't want a senior citizen mobile, and then logistically it wouldn't work for us. And so, you know, it was like, man, we're gonna have to buy something and gut it and put more into it. And it was like, well, I guess that might be the way it needs to be, until like you were, I don't even know what you were, well, I know what you were doing. I thought it was weird.
Yeah. So my phone was listening to me when we were motorhome shopping.
Yeah. Creepy.
And at the time, so this is even more weird. I don't even know if you know this full story, Sammy. Like we had home birth with our 3rd child. So at the time on Instagram, all I followed was like home birth accounts. I loved that. And so I was following all of that. And then, because my phone was listening to me, it's like the content was still home birth the algorithm would show me, but then it showed a home birth that was in a school bus. And that popped up on my account. And I was like, so I went to her account and I'm like, that's a school bus? Because it was like so beautiful how it did not look like a bus. And that was my first introduction to schoolies and how a school bus can be made to look like a really beautiful tiny home. And so I spent hours going through her entire account, all her story highlights, watching their build from beginning to end. And that sparked a new dream into me. And so for 3 months, I started showing Jono all these YouTube accounts, all these Instagram accounts of schoolie builds, and how, oh my gosh, Jono, we could do this for like.
By we, you mean me.
Yes. But we could do this for half the cost, or even like more than like buying a motorhome. We could pay cash for this dream. Like it was like really exciting. When this seed sparked in us, and that's why it happened quick, because once we like put all the pieces together, it became very real. Like, wow, we could do this now. We do not have to wait. And that's sort of where it sparked.
This is up for debate, but I also thought too, like, man, if we were to buy, because you know, you buy, like, let's say you were to buy a new motorhome, or even if it was used, it's going to be depreciating no matter what you do to it. you customize it, you renovate it. No matter what, that thing is appreciating. It's a vehicle at the end of the day. The bus actually had it's not going to appreciate forever, but it actually appreciated upon completion. And we've had friends that have sold them, like, since, we've built a whole network. We know a lot of people that live this life, and eventually, people either hold on to them or sell them. And not only that, we had it appraised, and it was kind of like, oh, we actually would not only get our money out, we get all our time out of it.
Yeah.
And we could actually even make a profit potentially. And obviously that may not always be the case depending on how long we hold on to it. But I saw that as like, okay, it diminishes the risk of this
Totally.
if we actually go out there and go for it. I mean, at the end of the day, we'll just lose our time, which is more valuable than the money. But it's like, I guess are we willing to take that risk?
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. That's how I kind of justified it in my head. Plus, I like projects.
Yeah.
No, no, you don't, Jono. You don't like projects. What are you talking about?
You should share what the numbers are. We found our bus on, I guess, was it Kijiji at the time?
Marketplace.
And it was $10,000 for the bus.
Which apparently is too much.
Yeah, people are paying less. We paid a little bit higher in Canada than our American friends, but $10,000 for the bus. And we set a budget.
Everything's more in Canada. It's kind of annoying.
What was our budget again?
Our budget was basically we'd sink another 30 into it, because I did a kind of an estimate as to like what it was actually going to cost putting everything in. And by the end, we were actually 10 under
budget,
about 8 or 10 under. And so we actually did it for about 32
grand. Yeah.
Which isn't that impressive, because before we went out on the road, we had to put a bunch in as far as mechanical.
Yeah. Then that's where some money went.
Which, I don't know if that was really much we could have done about, like, if we could do it all over, we would have actually flown down to Florida or Phoenix and bought a bus there and then brought it back. But it was tricky to do that during COVID. So it just, again, it is what it is.
So 32 grand for the bus. And then we got it appraised, and it got appraised for 100 grand. So that shows, appreciated it. Like, we could definitely make some income on it.
There was also the 26 that we had to put into it.
26,000 for the mechanics. Yeah.
So it was more like 58. Call it 60.
So there you go. But still, amazing, right? Yeah. So that's why we did a bus.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I think when you were talking about the math, and I kept talking about the math, and you were saying it wasn't just the numbers. And I meant the number side of it, but it's also like all that background math, like you said, right? Like the Starlink and looking beyond just motorhomes. And I think that's all the math that people don't do. It's not just how much does it cost. It's also, well, I can't do it because I can't work like that. Well, it's like, well, but can you? Like, how mobile is your job actually? Or I can't do it because my kids have never slept in a bus. Well, okay, could you teach them how to sleep in a bus? You know what I mean? Like, they don't back up all that stuff. They just come up with all these reasons why not. They just come up with all these reasons why not to. And so, I mean, that's kind of all the math you guys did, was like, well, this is our problem. Where's the solution? This is our problem. Where's the solution? Yeah. And so I just think that that's awesome, because so many people miss that part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just a little bit more context. We weren't camping people. We'd never actually taken our kids camping.
Never.
The only time Taryn and I did it was because we didn't have a choice. When we got married, we were young, we had no money. And it was like, hey, this is all we've got for honeymoon. So we're going to tent, and I can afford one night in a hotel. And so we tented in Crow's Nest Pass on our way to a hotel that was not that great in Cranbrook. And that was the best of our initial honeymoon.
That's the only camping we've ever done. Yep.
Yeah.
And we jumped into full life of it.
A lot of people think that like living nomadically is camping, and I can see that correlation, but it's really it is more than that. In like most people's definition of camping is throw your life into a trailer, go out to the mountains, sit around a fire doing nothing, and then come back after 2-3 days. And no, that wasn't of interest to us. It was, we did this purely because we wanted to see everything and experience everything. And we didn't even know some of the things that we wanted, which was like the community piece, which we didn't foresee, at least I didn't, but like that was a good serendipity as well. So
we didn't even know we were actually nature people. We've become like obsessed with national parks.
I guess.
We didn't even know these things about
We were
ourselves.
not those people.
And it just grew into us.
Anyway.
I am so amazed right now. I'm like, I keep like muting my mic because I have about 1,800 things on my list here. Oh, I freaking love this. I love this. I love every piece of what you've just said.
I have a lot of questions too, Melissa, so you go ahead and ask.
Go. No, you go ahead and
Are you
start,
sure?
Sammy. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. My first one is actually that one's not that important. I'm gonna change that. My first question that I want to ask is talking about like not being camping people. Like, what was that like with the kids then? If the kids had never, I know it's not camping, so please don't think that I'm saying that it's not camping, but
it wasn't so much. It's just like, well, one, we never like went out and bought a trailer or something. I think we had a tent at one point, but it was just never, you know, like we would have rather gone and gotten in like an Airbnb or something. Like it was just,
yeah,
you know, we were adventure-y. It was just like, I don't know. We just didn't do it. It
wasn't on the radar.
Yeah.
Well, because I know like you guys lived out in Bragg Creek for a while, and so like obviously when you lived there, your littlest wasn't born yet, but your older two were out there, I believe. And so they were pretty young, so they had some outside time.
Yeah.
But then, so how did the kids take to it being, because obviously once you're on the road, like, yes, like in terms of like cooking and sleeping, like you're in a comfortable place, but most of your days are spent outside playing, right? Like how did the kids take to that piece of it?
Yeah, adjusting to being outside, because well, part of living tiny is you want to be outside as much as possible, because it can get chaotic being inside all day in a tiny space. So we knew going into this that we were going to stretch our children to be outside more, and we knew that was a really good healthy thing for them. But it did take some adjusting, because we previously, before the bus, we lived in a 3,000 square foot home, and so we had lots of space and
big yard. We lived on a park.
Yeah, so it was pretty crazy to go into 270 square feet. But I would say, so we had to push them outside, and a lot of times, they weren't excited about it first, and they get bored. But like we just knew, like, you just keep doing it, and it's so good for them to be bored, and they're going to find things to do, and it's really cool now that we're coming up this summer. End of summer will be 2 years. And our oldest struggled the most probably with entering into bus life because of the age she was at the time, and also the neighborhood we lived in. She had made all these friends, and so when we were leaving that, anybody would ask her in the first few months how she liked living in a school bus, and traveling on the road. And sorry, you can edit this part. I keep touching the table and I'm probably shaking.
It makes everything shake.
I'm like,
it's all good.
Okay, you didn't notice it? Okay, now I forgot.
I did notice it, but it's fine.
Okay, I'm holding my hands now. Okay. I'm saying, so when people would ask her what it's like living in a school bus and living on the road, she would often say, I don't like it. She really missed our neighborhood and our house. And so it was hard for her, and it was hard as a mom, like mom guilt, like, oh my gosh, are we making the right decision? And so we struggled with that a little bit, but I can say, like I said, coming up on 2 years, people now ask her of what she thinks of living in a bus. And she says, can we live like this for another 4 years? She's very specific about it. And when we were at my mom's, like we're back at my parents' house visiting them right now, and we were in the house one day, and the weather's not as great. And she just was really upset that she couldn't go outside. And she's like, I just feel gross being inside. I just want to go outside. I feel better when I'm outside. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. And so
we also underestimated how relatively easy it is to adapt. I think so many people, their first response is, I could never live in that small space. And I'm like, you could. I mean, people live in smaller spaces. You underestimate your ability to adapt to your environment. Like, humans are incredibly adaptive, and it may be uncomfortable. I think that's what people are saying, is that sounds really uncomfortable. And it's like, well, yeah, but what's the end goal? you know, and if the end goal is enough to drive you to make changes that are uncomfortable, then you'll probably do it. And because we get a lot of people that say, man, you're living my dream. I'm like, well, why aren't you doing it? And then there's this list that comes up, and I'm like, no, well, like we could all have the same list. Everyone kind of has the same stuff. You know, there's outliers, like there's people like who have like crazy health conditions, or maybe someone close to them has. It's that would be kind of the biggest thing, or maybe there is some like there are some outlier things that could get in the way, but it's kind of interesting, you know, how many people are like so quick to just they give up before they even start. It's like they're hardwired somehow to figure out all the ways why not, and it's baffling to me. Because if someone was to say, like, whenever they say it, it's a hard, like I have to bite my tongue because I don't want to say too much, but it's like, we're no different than you. We are the same. We just chose to go. We chose to do it, and you're the only one that's stopping you. You know, like there's always a way if you're willing. I don't know how I got on that, but it kind of ties into the, like, it was so terrifying. You know, like there was some anxiousness, you know, when we packed up our home into a shipping container, and we like are driving away from the city that we've called home for many years, and saying goodbye to family when we initially kind of like headed down south into this unknown place. And it's a very weird experience to have to actually rely on your GPS because you have no bearings whatsoever for where you are ever. Although and again, you adapt. You know, now we're very comfortable being in unknown places. It doesn't freak us out. You know, when there's weird people around, it's like, oh, that's pretty normal. You know, it's like, anyway, it's kind of interesting how you can adapt. And I think people underestimate their own ability. And I believe we as a species were built that way to adapt. And it's unfortunate that so many people think that that's not the case.
Can you say that? Think that's not the case part again? Because somebody just beeped.
Yeah, it's a kids watch. Wouldn't beep. That's the case again. Unfortunately,
What did I say?
Unfortunately,
that's just not the case. I don't know what I said. What was I saying?
Just say, I think that's not the case. That was all you said.
I think that's not the case.
Thank you. No, and I totally agree with you on, obviously we could delve into that so much deeper on so many levels, but even like, especially in North America, we're so spoiled with space that we think, how do you live in a tiny space? And it's like, you know, the rest of the world actually lives in quite tiny spaces with many people living in there. And we're like, oh, I'm going to have a third child, so I need to have 3,000 square feet. I cannot possibly live in less than that with 3 children. And we just have such a weird mentality about space. And exactly like you said, like our ability to adapt. We can adapt to anything if we want to. If you don't want to, you're never going to adapt. But if you want to adapt, you can adapt to anything. And I think that's a really valid point that lots of people forget.
Or if you have to. Right? Then people, they're like, okay, yeah, right. If you have to. You know, like, man, they made that whole show. I didn't watch all of it, but I know the premise of the show, Schitt's Creek, I think it's called. And it's about the super wealthy family who loses everything. And the only thing they had left was this, they had bought the rights to this town. And so they moved there, and they're living in a hotel or like whatever, a motel, whatever. And it's just like, it's funny, but it's also like, it says a lot about what you just said. And I think that show became very popular because I think it hit something for people, not just the comedy, but the actual like premise of that concept.
Yeah. I've never seen a single episode of
my God.
Go watch it. It's Canadian.
So freaking funny.
I cannot start TV series because I can't stop. Like I don't watch new series because I just can't.
Friends only for Sammy.
Friends and Scrubs on repeat because I can't start new ones. It's a problem. Or if there's like 6 episodes, then it's fine.
I have no idea how many there would be.
I'm sorry, Sam.
I just want to have one more question, Melissa, and then you can go.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to tie into what you were saying about finding a new community in this schooly journey, because I know that you guys have a really close community here between family and friends and lots of people that you're really, really close with. And I think that could be a big thing that holds people back is, but I'll lose all these people. And I mean, like, you're not going to lose them. You're going to be far away from them, but it doesn't mean you lose them. Oh, I just hit my mic. And so can you speak on what that journey was like for you guys with going away from the people you were really close on, whether that's family, friends, people that, you know, you're close to? And for a while, I'm sure there was a period of time where you weren't alone because you would talk to them, but you weren't with them. And then learning to build that new community. And I remember when you shared that on Instagram, Taryn, that you guys were surprised by this amazing community that you had met on this journey. Can you speak about what it was like leaving, quote unquote, leaving, and that period of time before finding this new community? And obviously you found, but like really connected with.
Yeah, and I would say that the first what, 2-3 months once we left.
I'm the more extroverted one, and so I think it was actually harder on me, and I didn't anticipate that. You know, I've historically said if it was just me and Taryn in the woods making babies, I'd probably be happy. And I've learned over the years that that's not really true.
Yeah,
that's more you.
Yeah, we actually learned that I'm way more introverted. I'm energized by being more alone, and he needs people. And so that was hard the first few months on the road, that he was missing some of that. It's like part is a bit lonely.
It was a little rough. It was like, here I am, I'm taking my family, I'm taking 4 girls, Taryn, our 3 daughters, into this unknown land. And the US is definitely different than Canada. Like, you know, culturally, there's a lot of differences. You know, I'm not going to get into all of it. But in a bus, in places like just even being in the desert, you know, like initially freaked me out. I remember the first night we were in the desert and I like went outside, you know, like, and you drop yourself into the middle of nowhere. Basically, there's no one around, nothing around. You are absolutely alone. And in the desert, there's no noise.
Yeah, it's crazy.
There's nothing alive, which is really weird. Unlike what we're used to here in Alberta, you'll hear birds, maybe an owl, like you'll hear something. Different parts of the desert, it's just dead quiet. Because the things that are alive, you don't want to see them. And they're just kind of like, you know, going around the ground, making something happen. They don't make a lot of noise, like the tarantulas or like the scorpions or whatever. And I just remember just being so freaked out. I'm like, what are we doing? Yeah. This is like a week into it. You know, I think we got down into southern Utah and we had hit it. It was beautiful, but it was terrifying. That coupled with just like, yeah, okay, what's cool is we live in a time where we can easily connect via things like video conferencing or what have you. You're able to like stay connected very easily with your community when you are away from home. But it doesn't, there's still like a loneliness. And for me, it was like really hard. So everything coupled together, I didn't realize it at the time, but after our first year of like living nomadically, I can now look back and after the first few months where we started to like meet more people, travel with people, and we always were with the other people. I could retrospectively look at it and go, oh my gosh, I wasn't having like a mental breakdown, but I was definitely like, there was some mental health stuff going on, and I was in a low, even though I was like, why? I should have been in a high, because we were actually fulfilling something that we had worked really hard towards. And there's just a culmination of a lot, but you know, it taught me a lot about like what I, at least myself, and what I really desire is I do like to be around people. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, we realized we realized that in the journey, how important people are. We're not meant to do life alone. Because I think some people could jump into nomad life. I can't wait to just be alone. Like, just go do my own thing and not worry about people, because relationships are hard sometimes. And sometimes you can get like, I don't want to deal with people anymore. And so I think some people do jump into that lifestyle, just like, I want to get away from the world. And there are people we met on the road that are like that.
There's probably, you know, for every, there's probably a hermit for every, you know, 100,000 people kind of. I don't know what the numbers would be. Like, there's probably some outliers.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know, it's important, even if you are more
Yeah.
introverted.
You still need a community. And so that what happened while those first 2 months were hard. I had been aware while we were building our bus, I had already been kind of jumping into the online community. So when I started our Instagram account, I tried to find any other account that was, building schoolies as well. So I followed them all. And Jono wasn't part of that as much. So that's probably why he felt a bit more lonely.
I was in the sense of like, I was trying to like figure out what did they do to build their bus
yes.
when we were building the bus. I didn't care about who they were. I didn't ask them questions or try and build a relationship. I basically just watched whatever videos they made, looked at what they did in their bus so that I could either not do what they did or mimic it.
Yeah.
Because it was, I'd never done anything like this before. I'd never really built. I built like some furniture, I didn't know how to build a home. But yeah.
So that was as much as he knew of like the people that I was following. He just was like, get their input of how to build our bus. That's all. But I was always engaging online, like in my DMs on Instagram and getting to know all these like couples and families and singles that were on the road. And through all that, I discovered an event. It's called Schoolie Palooza, and it happens down in Schoolie Palooza. It's a crazy name. Kind of like
there's controversy around it. I don't know. Somebody trademarked it. Weird stuff going on, but
no,
it existed. I don't know if it'll continue to exist. I think that's up for debate.
Yeah, but it's like we've gone 2 years down a row, and it happens in January, and it's on the border of Arizona, California, and it's sort of, some people describe it kind of like Burning Man. It has some
Burning
of those
Man
elements.
Meets Coachella.
Yes.
For nomads.
For nomads. Yeah. And I had been aware of this through Instagram, and I'm like, that was like my big goal. I was like, I can't wait to go there. And I kept telling Jono about that. And when those first 2 months, I'm like, we're going there. It's going to be amazing. And he was so apprehensive of it. He was like, I don't want to meet any of these people. He was like, even though that's what he deep down desired that, but he just was like so uncomfortable.
Hippies freaked me right out, and I didn't know that now I fully embrace the hippies. I have a sweet spot for the hippies, but I was like, that is like zero. I have zero desire to go and throw myself into something like that for a week to 10 days. It's like so outside of my comfort zone. Do I want to be in a sound bath? Do I want to be in like a drum circle? Not really.
So that's the kind of stuff he thought we were going, and then that did exist.
That actually did all happen.
It all did happen.
I don't need to be fire dancing. I don't need to see fire dancing.
Yeah. So we took our kids to that. It was almost 14 days long. But we found our crew. I'm sure
our families were like,
our families thought we were a little crazy, but we found the people that I followed on Instagram. I found them, and we parked up with them. And I kept bringing John on all these buses. Look, this is so and so. He didn't know who any of these people were, but I like knew them from online.
And I'd meet them. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
you're not one of the fire dancers. And there's nothing wrong with the fire dancers. They're actually really awesome.
Yes.
But this was me at that time, just being like, no, that's outside. That's outside of me.
Yeah. You got to meet some other fellow engineers that built their bus, because John had done engineering for a time. So he started to meet people. Oh, there's people kind of like us. And so we started like,
there's all types.
Yeah, getting acquainted with all these different people. And it turned into, he loved it so much. By the end of the event, we went to a girl, she's a pink bus, and she was doing tattoos. And we got tattoos right outside her pink school bus, matching tattoos to commemorate this most important event in our life.
Most important.
I don't know, that didn't make sense.
A
very important event in life. There it is. Chasing the sun. That's our very minimalist kind of tattoo. John's got one on his leg.
Upper thigh.
Upper thigh.
No, it's not.
That's how much the event meant to us. We made such amazing relationships. Our kids, and that's what turned our kids around. That's coming back to my daughter, like why she loves this life so much. Anyone that, again, also asks her, why do you love this life?
She thought we were very weird. Like, she was like, my parents are crazy.
Yeah.
We're super weird. Like we would all be.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on in my life?
Yeah. Living in a school bus.
And then when she saw all these other kids, there's so many others. There's actually a lot of kids that live this way.
Yeah.
And they're all right. She kind of had the same experience I did. Oh, there's other people and they're all right.
Yeah. We're not so weird.
Yeah.
So they're weirdos. And they made tons of friends those 2 weeks. And then after that, it's like you go to an event like that and you make those friends, and then everyone's living that same lifestyle. So we all some of us stuck together and like spent weeks traveling with each other. And we eventually had to part ways because we have to come back up to Canada because that's where we're from.
Downside.
But then we got to go again. We just got, after our second year around, we went back to that event and we got to see repeats of the previous year. And then we made new friends, people there for the first time. And the next time we went, we ended up 2 months after that event living with the community of people. It was like a circle
Basically a commune.
In Nevada. We were just outside of Vegas, and it was like 2 months of all being circled up. About 4 of us were consistently there, and then other people would like come in and out. And it was the coolest thing to just like do life with people. And we were raising our kids together, and we were sharing meals, and I don't know, it was life changing, and it's forever like made an imprint on our life and how we see people and community and humanity. And yeah, it's just what's made us love this lifestyle so much. So there you go. There's a long answer to that question, Sammy.
No, it was
Freaking
it was such a good answer. And I've been following everywhere you're going, all these places you've go, because we're going to go on a road trip down to California this summer. And I'm like noting these down because I'm like, these look good. This looks good. Yeah, this looks good. And we won't be able to obviously make all of them because we're going for a month, not for like 6 months.
You could do a lot in a month.
Yeah,
I know.
A lot.
But it'll be good. But it's so interesting hearing, sorry, Melissa, I'm gonna let you go 1 sec here. It's so interesting hearing you guys talk about, the introvert, extrovert, and the way that you guys switch that way around. Because obviously knowing you guys, like I know everybody functions very differently. And like you said, recharge is different than how you present yourself. Because I also recharge alone. I love being around people, but I don't recharge around people. And it's hearing like how Jono was like, I don't want any relationships, like hard no, stay away from me. I don't want any. I just want your information, please and thank you. And then he's like, wait, hold on. Actually, I do want those relationships. Obviously, just wanting to pick the ones that actually make sense. And I think it's really interesting hearing the way that you both had to navigate that and figure out the different sides of it. And I do remember, Jono, you telling me the first time you had a sound bath and how you felt about that.
So wild.
Technically, I didn't have it. I actually sat beside it happening.
She did some things to you.
I was a part of the experience. Yeah, she brought me into it.
Yeah. She became a very good friend of ours. I loved her. She stretched us.
I
was like,
that's why she liked it. She's like, I'm gonna break this guy.
Yeah, make him uncomfortable.
I'm gonna give him a tuning fork to the forehead.
I mean, Jono, you also like to make people uncomfortable and break them.
Totally.
So...
Yeah, but and I went for it. I went over and like I was like, I'm going to experience this because I want to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's crazy.
So cool. I keep having to mute my mic because I'm just cracking up so much, and I don't think I'm gonna cut out all the audio. Is gonna be like Melissa cackling. So good. Oh my gosh, Kate, Sammy, can I ask a question?
Yeah, no, go. I'm leaving it for you now. I won't hoard them.
Okay, I want to know how important it has been for you to be on the same page with each other during this process. Like, are you guys like both of you all the way in this all the time? Or do you find that like sometimes one of you wavers and then the other one's there to pick them up? Or do you know what I mean? Or like how important it is that you guys are like, you're living this nomadic lifestyle. Clearly you have to have some sort of like, your end goals have to be similar or the same for you to be all in on this life. Hey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'd be tricky if we were not both like on the same page. I think when I shared at the beginning, I had to like pull Jono along for a little bit, like to get him onto the bus, like train. Like,
right.
Let's do this. And so I think it took us a while, but once we were on the same page and once we caught the vision of how we could do this, ever since we have like both, I don't even think there has been wavering besides like at the beginning when you probably kept it inside.
No, there'd be like times where, it's I don't know, something weird happens, or I don't know, we miss a turn on an interchange or something. And, you know, I'd probably say something like, this was your idea, you know, like, but I never like actually felt that way. It was just a good way to just like throw a spear at Taryn.
Yeah. Or anytime like a mechanical problem happens, like sometimes those things would happen, and it's a lot of money, and you're like, oh, is this a sign? Like we're not supposed to be doing this? Like we'd have little moments like that. Right?
No, but I think we both recognized it was because it's not like it just like boom happened. You know, the biggest step forward was dropping 10 grand on buying the bus, and then it was just like this is how we've learned to be in our life. It's like we're gonna own it.
Yeah.
And because like what do? You try and sell the bus. I guess that could have been a thing, but it's like we wanted to see it through. And we just followed through. You know, I think the worst thing that could have happened is it just totally died and we were dead in the water. But I think for us, and that actually it felt that way when before we even left, like it was just kind of like at the end of the build where we had taken it to a mechanic and they listed off all these things we'd have to do, and a lot of the things were things that we couldn't have foreseen when we were trying to buy it. You know, just like when you buy anything that's not brand new, right? It's just there's going to be some unknowns. And it was kind of like, well, we've already gone this far. And so you just keep going. And so I think we had the resolve early on because we talked everything through, thought it through, just worked it through. I mean, communication was the biggest thing. And there was so much communication before a lot of the triggers were pulled. By the time we were pulling the triggers, it was like we're going all the way, you know. And so even if, you know, we get 10 miles down the road and we got to like swap an engine for 30 grand, we're doing it. You know, it's like, this is what we're doing. We're going to make it happen. And that would have sucked. I'm sure we wouldn't have been pleased with one another, but there would never have been blame because we both chose to take full ownership. Yes, I took, you know, Taryn had the vision first. I came along a little bit later because I knew I was going to have to build it. I was going to have to figure out how we were going to financially, you know, like what was like I put the estimate together. I figured out where's this money going to come from. We wanted to pay cash for the whole thing. You know, we didn't want to dip into any savings we had. We were like, we want to cash flow this thing. So how are we going to make this all happen? So all she had to do was decide this is something I want to do. I just need to convince Jono. And then I had to do all the heavy lifting. But no, that's how we work a little bit.
We know each other's strengths.
I'm just more I'm more of like the logic, the thinker. I'm also I'm the quick to make a decision, which is kind of interesting. But when I make decisions, I quickly think it through. I'll stay up like all night long, figure it out, and then go. And so the fact that you had already kind of made the call in your mind, because she's slower to make decisions, you know, she knew she had me when she showed me what was possible. And then we just owned it. And I forget what the question was at the beginning.
But how we're on the same page. I think that helps that because we have our kids as well. And we know to be a unified couple for our kids is so important. And so to be on the same team and to show our kids follow through, and that we've spoke of what we are building this bus so we can chase the sun and we can do hard things. That is our mantra in our family. And so to just anytime there was like problems that came on the road, it's like, no, we can't like let this be it. We're not going to give up. Like we're going to show them, yes, this is hard, but we are going to push through because this is the goals we said we were going to do as a family. And mom and dad like have agreed to do this. We're on the same team. And so that's what kept us going. And anytime it's been hard, it just that pushes us through because of the greater why. Our
general belief is the more our kids can see us struggle and overcome, that's the greatest gift we can give to them. And so creating as many opportunities for that. I mean, sometimes it's not like desired, but it happens. But like we also seize opportunities to do that, you know, because I think I don't want my kids to think that everything's just handed to you. I want them to see us like, I was okay. Like we didn't have many arguments building the bus because that's when it can be most challenging. I mean, even traveling a bit too times, you're in a tin can and there's no escape.
Pressure cooker.
It's a pressure cooker, but you know, there was one. It was when we did our shower, and neither of us had ever done it. So we did tile and grout, and my body was just done, and I was like, Taryn, you need to like watch YouTube or something and figure out how to grout it. Like it's all you. You want this shower, like go for it. And let's just say Taryn watched the wrong YouTube video, but she did it, and then I had to basically scrape all the grout. It wasn't a happy day, and our kids
saw us really fight in that moment.
You know, I mean, maybe we could have like hid that from them a little bit, but I don't know. I look back, I'm like, I'm actually glad our kids saw us like really get into it that day, because they also see us come back together and move past it, and we never hold on to it.
Yeah,
and I want them to know that it's normal to like. It's okay to be intense, to have high volume conversations. You know, they typically tell their grandparents, you know, about they tell them everything.
Yes.
But I'm like, okay, we could either hide that from them, you know, and there's probably a time and a place for certain things for sure. It's not for them. But that was like something like they can shoulder that. And as long as they see us figure it out.
Resolution. Learn how to.
Because if they have this expectation that like a relationship is just butterflies and rainbows, well, that's going to be a real rude awakening when they actually enter into. So I don't know. Like what was the question again?
I don't know. You went off
on tangents. Yeah.
And the shower is beautiful, by the way.
Thank you. Thanks for Jono fixing it.
Turned out great.
You get really close, you can still see all the mistakes, but it's all good. It's part of the story.
I remember you telling the shower grout story. So it's like laughing before he even got into it. It's like, I remember. I think you're right though. Like I mean, obviously, like you said, Jono, like having like intense high volume conversations in front of your kids, like on a regular basis, not healthy. Having the odd one over a ultimately not important. I don't know the right way to word this. Not like you're not fighting about your relationship. You're fighting about a miscommunication, an error, right? Like those kinds of things are good for kids to see. It's not good for your kids to see you fighting about your relationship, but those little things, like you said, see the conversation, see the resolution of it, and how a healthy argument can happen and move forward from that. And
they saw the resolution. That's you nailed it when you said that. They follow through with it.
Yeah, they didn't see all of it because that's not appropriate. But
they missed the angry sex and the makeup sex after that.
That's also why we have soundproofing. We did build that into our bus, so the back bedroom is soundproof.
Yeah.
So,
the only thing we don't have.
And we have a door because people always ask that question.
Smart.
Yeah.
I also think it's
clever.
I also think it's really important what you were saying is the whole concept of the hard things are going to happen and how do we navigate it, and we're not going to quit just because it's hard. And I think, again, that's a really important lesson for people to learn is you don't quit something because it's hard. You can quit because you've actually changed your mind and it's not the right path for you. Like if you guys got down this road, you started living this life for a summer and you're like, yeah, that's actually not for us. We don't enjoy this at all.
Yeah, it's okay.
That's a reason to stop. But if it's too hard, we're not doing this, that's not a reason necessarily, right? Like I think that's an important distinction for people to make. Hard doesn't mean stop. Do you still want it and it's hard? Or did you actually decide this is not at all what I want? And so it's not worth it, you know? So I think that's an important one.
For
sure.
Yeah, and that's so many people ask us the question, like, how long are you going to live like nomadically? And there's no answer to that because it's like, well, we'll be done when we're done. Right. And it's kind of like tying into what you're saying. It's like, I think a lot of people perceive it like, are you going to quit because there's hard pieces to it? Well, it's like, well, no, you know, that's not a reason, but the reason is when you're done.
Yeah.
It's like, we had our failure, you know, like we're ready to move on to the next chapter. That's a lot different than running from something. Right.
So cool.
Absolutely.
I love that. What about your kids? Like we talked about like you guys and social adjusting to that social, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but you talked about when you moved and your oldest had friends in the neighborhood. Can you talk about social and your
Yeah.
kids and
Yes.
like and you're gotten like you're homeschooling obviously
Yep.
but can you talk a little bit about their social life now?
Totally. Yeah. And this is, again, we get this question very often. And especially that's probably the most critical thing we get on our social media is you're taking your kids away from like social opportunities. And so we get critiqued a lot on that. But one thing I've learned, I actually love homeschooling. And I actually,
Really? You don't love every part.
No, I don't. I should say there are really hard days some days.
I guess you love it, but the hard things.
Yes. I guess
I hear most about the challenges.
The challenges, but the fruit. I love the fruit of what I'm seeing in my children, and that they're getting to learn how to because a lot of our interactions, we are probably interacting way more with adults and our kids, but I love that our kids are getting to see how to interact with adults on a regular basis. And so they're learning those skills. And of course we do still have those opportunities for them. Like when we come up to these events, we meet families on the road, we make sure we're going to actually playgrounds on a weekly basis that our kids are playing. And for us, our church is important to us, and we find that on the road. We go to different churches every week. Sometimes we'll stay at one for like a few weeks. And so our kids are going to like a class where they're getting around kids their age. So we're making sure that is happening. And then we also got our girls, like they have these ways of staying in touch with their friends back home. So our oldest, she uses this watch, and it's all like these approved contacts, and some of her friends are on it, and she does video calls with the one actually weekly. And she text messages this little friend, and just so cute. And so we're finding ways for them to stay in touch still with their friends back home, but they're also like really learning how to go out into the world and make new friends on a regular basis. And also like learn how to say goodbye to friends pretty regularly too, which I think is also make new friends. I think it's kind of a good skill that they're learning that very quickly how to adapt to like saying hello, saying goodbye, and not getting so attached to people. I know some people say, well, that's a con. Are they not going to like learn attachment? But we do, like when we come back home, that's why we also spend a few months back home. They are with their family and friends that are really consistent in their life, and they have those really good attachments to those people.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I don't know, I think if we saw that all they had was like super short-term relationships and there was no continuity within any of them, or continuation, I think that would be concerning. I mean, I was a kid, we moved enough as I was growing up that was challenging, but I'm like, I don't feel scarred by it or anything. And so I'm like, I don't know if I think there's maybe parts of me that was like, I don't have a friend that was like, I've known him since I was 5 or her, and it's been lifelong. I don't actually have that. I'm sure there's some people that do. But just like anything else, life, geography, like there's things that shift over time. And if you just hold on to that being the only thing that's of value in relationships, I think you're gonna be hurt a lot, And I'm not saying that it's not good. I want long-term relationships, but I don't like, that would be my one, because it does come up, like, how are they going to form long-term relationships? And I'm like, they do have them, and we do see it. And it would be a bit of a concern, I think, for us if we weren't seeing that happening, but they just aren't physically always together. And we do live in a world now where you don't need to be physically together all the time to have a continued relationship. And, just sitting in a classroom with your same age group day after day, that is not the only thing that yields socialization. In what part of anyone's life does that continue? Like how many people in their workplace are only in a cubicle zone with people that are the same age as them? Like it's not how life works. You have to work with people that are older. You have to, in your community, you have to interact with people that are older, younger. You're not fit within an age demographic. And so you should know how to interact with people who are more mature than you, who are less mature than you, different cultures, different the whole shebang.
Yeah.
And I mean, in Canada, we have a lot of that because we're pretty diverse. And I think it's no different when you're more nomadic. But what you do build is fingers. This is something that we never had before. We have like, it's not fingers, but like relationships that are connections that are deeper and more diverse geographically than we would have ever had otherwise.
Yeah.
And that's been kind of a serendipity. We now have people that we could reignite, you know, like we don't necessarily have to stay in touch, but let's say we were going to be in Germany, there's someone we can reach out to.
Yeah.
You know, if we're in the UK, if we're obviously for sure in different parts of the US,
we have friends everywhere.
There's people that we now know everywhere, as opposed to like just like, you know, just where we were.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know, I think everyone could benefit from that. And I think, you know, even just having the technology that we have in the world today, you can choose to actually open that up for yourself too. It's not like you just have to live nomadically to do that. I think there's many ways you can do that now, but you know, we have to rethink, I think, how we define relationships because the world has changed.
100%.
You know, we don't live in a world where, you know, you have your friend on speed dial and they live at the end of your street and that's it. The world is smaller.
How cool.
I feel like this is kind of not necessarily schooly topic related, but I'm going to talk about it anyways. But like what you're talking about, Jono, is that exact, like we don't socialize by being in a room with the same age kids all the time. And I have that discussion with people all the time when they are like, oh, this your kids visit on this kind of socialization being in homeschool. And like they don't actually, they are still socializing with kids. You have this very narrow view of what socialization means, and you really need to broaden it, because just remember, your kids don't learn social skills from other kids. That's the Lord of the Flies, and we don't want to go there. Like they actually learn it from you and from other adults, and that's how, and they go to apply it in different socialization and different social situations. And we're really missing that. And you think about it, like this whole same age group thing is very new in society, because it wasn't that long ago that we had multiple grade schoolhouses. And that was part of it. And it's only a very recent time where it's the same age thing. And it's, I think, messed with us a lot because it screwed it up. Anyways, that's a whole other topic.
I love that.
I love my other favorite part I love about how with our girls now is their sibling relationship. And I can't compare it to anything really, but what I've just seen is they've become so dependent on each other in that relationship while we've been on the road, and their friendships with one another have blossomed. Like, they don't actually sometimes even know how to be apart from each other. It's like if one wants to go, we have their little cousin, they want to do a sleepover. It's like all three have to go. They have to go as a unit because they love to be together, and they create play all the time with one another. I think that's my most favorite thing about the life we've chosen to live, is that we get to see that on a daily, that this bond they're developing with each other is really special. And so I pray and hope that it continues through the rest of their life. So
cool. I'm so glad you said that, because that was one of the things I was going to ask about, was their relationship with each other. That is so cool. I think, for the record, I just go on record and say that I think you guys are giving your kids a beautiful gift. Like I know that there's always going to be trolls on the internet, and I know there's always going to be some shamers out there, and I say shame on the shamers because I don't think it's up to anybody else to judge. I think you're giving your kids a beautiful gift. Like the lessons they're going to learn from this are just, they're just going to, I'm already, like, I feel like I'm excited to hear their story of this.
Totally.
You know, like,
me too.
Right?
They're like 20 years old and recounting this time in their life.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I just think that's really cool. I think it's really cool.
Thanks for saying that, because it is something that, again, like the little seeds of doubt kind of pop up sometimes as a parent. You're like, are we making the best decision for our children? You like, we all do that as parents. We question everything, and it's just, as long as you take ownership, it's like, that's what you have to take ownership in what you're doing and own it.
Yeah, there's trade-offs. You know, like, I mean, we could sit here and be like, oh, there's so many great things. It's like, no, there's things that, like, it is a trade-off. Like, it's harder for us to escape our kids. sometimes it's very difficult. Like you're like,
Yeah.
I just need to get away from them,
Right.
And I think every parent can probably feel that at times, but it when you're in a tight space and there's, like you don't have some of the things that you can lean on when you're, maybe close to family and things like that. Like there's definitely support systems you don't have. Even when you do build like community within the nomadic community, like it's different. And so like there's definitely challenges and trade-offs, and you just accept them. Or I think one other thing, and it's kind of like the thing that sits inside you. You're like, I have a lot of fond memories of having my own bedroom, or like being able, like I don't know, like just different things that come with being housed, I guess you could say. Having a place. And I mean, home is kind of where you make it. I think that is true. But there's always that part of you, because it's not like we grew up living this way, either of us. And so like any parent, you want your kids to not only have what you had, some of the experiences you had, but more. And when you're not giving them some of the experiences that you had, that are like important to you, like it as an example, like Christmas. We love Christmas. Like I would get the decorations out as soon as Halloween was over. Like I was like on it. I love it. And we, like Taryn had said, we had a big house, we would decorate, and it was this whole thing. You don't do that on a bus. It's just, there's nowhere to put it. You can't store it all year.
So our Christmas
we do have a tiny one that sits under our bed, and it takes up space, and it's because we're trying to hold on to that
a little bit of it
and make it a thing, but it's not. And so like there are trade-offs to it. But you kind of just gotta everything, this for that kind of thing. And but those things definitely cast doubt, and it's gonna be hard at times, because you're like, oh man, I want my kids to have this, but we're doing this, and so they can't have that, and you can't always have everything. That is hard.
Totally. What do you do when you need a quiet space? When one person is like, I need to be alone right now, what do you do?
I
don't know what we do.
Well,
we have a Jeep.
We have a Jeep.
We tow a Jeep.
One will go sit in the Jeep.
Sit in the Jeep, and we'll just go somewhere else.
Go for a walk. Yeah. That's, or the deck. We have a rooftop deck. So sometimes Jono knows when I'm up there, I just need to sit up there, look at the view, and I need quiet time for a little bit. Like that's my little retreat. So we have, we have to make sure we're really good at communicating those needs sometimes when one of us needs that. And
our kids do too.
They communicate that to us as well.
They just want to, like, our oldest probably more, because like our younger two are, definitely, they're younger, and so they don't necessarily have that same level of independence, and they don't need their space. But our oldest would be like, we can just tell she'll kind of go off and she needs to go draw or something, or read or whatever, and she does her thing, and she just doesn't want to be bothered by her sisters or us. And it's like, you can even do it. I mean, the way we built our bus, we do have the ability to create
little spaces, multiple
areas of separation, believe it or not. And so, I think that was a forethought that we had. It's like, even right now, you probably can't hear them. They're giggling to whatever they're doing in the very far back of our bus. But there's two sound barriers,
two doors,
and so, I don't know, there's a lot of forethought that goes into like some of these human needs, let alone, being able to like have people over while our kids are sleeping. Well, we wanted to have sound barrier, like
we have a table that actually folds, and it can seat 10. And when we had this community, we did multiple nights. We could see, we had how many in here? 10 to 14 people doing game nights, having a potluck, and our kids are sleeping in the back. We just trained them to like get used to that. It's really crazy, actually.
Just becomes white noise at some point, right? They're just used to it. It's just whatever it is.
Totally, they adapted.
I think you kind of hinted at this. I don't know if you want to answer this question, but like probably people wondering, so I'm gonna ask it. How does intimate life happen when you have these sound barrier? When, like, obviously you have a sound barrier, but like how sound barrier is your sound barrier?
Well, we do, but try to make sure they're like really asleep. But there has been one time, I'm gonna tell a funny one, because our oldest is getting older, so she's a lighter sleeper, and what did she woke, she was awake.
Why is the bus rocking? We're like, we're getting in bed, just don't worry about it.
So that was like awkward.
That wrecked everything.
Oh, it's only happened one time so far, but I know.
I could get into the science behind it, but like there
ways to do
there
things
are
so
strategies.
The bus doesn't rock as much.
You don't want to create too much resonance. You don't want the bus to resonate with the actions.
Yes.
Anyway, it's a whole different ball game.
Got it figured out.
Yeah, we do.
I just there's a Instagram account that I follow, and they co-sleep with their older kids. They travel around the world a lot, but they co-sleep with their kids, and I think they get to like 7 and 5 or something like that. And they always get that question of like, well, how do you have an intimate life with, your kids sleeping in your bed? And her response is, if you think the bed is the only place to do that, then you have a problem.
It's true.
And
that's why we said we have a Jeep. We can just
yeah.
We actually haven't done that yet, but the kid is getting older, so that might have to be the next.
There's also a whole outside place at certain times a year when certain places you could be, right? So, Anyways, moving along, I really want to just jump back to something you were saying about you never wonder what your kids are going to think of this life that you're giving them. And I know that I've talked to a few people here and there that had maybe not a bus schooly life, but had some sort of life where their parents, maybe were in the army, so they moved around all the time or whatever. They moved around a lot. And you can get two different views, right? You can get like hated it, will never travel, and loved it. And if you really dig, I feel like what you learn from those people is the way that their parents handled it. Like it's not about what the lifestyle was, it's how did their parents present that lifestyle. Is this fun and exciting and beautiful and we're going to embrace it and everything's wonderful, even though there's hard spots? Or is it really crappy because the army moved us again? This is really inconvenient and I'm really tired of it, right? And so I think that obviously knowing you guys, I know the way that you're presenting it to your kids. And I don't, obviously it's not like I know you, but I know you pretty well enough to know that that's how you're, and even in this conversation, I'm sure Melissa's figured out the way that you're presenting it to your kids is in a beautiful way. And so I think no matter what you're doing, they're going to come out with this, like, it was awesome. Whether they want to do it themselves or not is irrelevant, but that it was awesome. Our parents gave us this huge opportunity. So
I love that. Yeah, I think it's what we often try to say to them, like the perspective is we get to do this. Like, how cool is it that we get to do this? It's not like a have to. It's like, we get to.
I think it helps that other kids, we catch little whisperings of like, oh, you're so, like they'll tell our kids like, man, that's so cool. Like so that I'm sure that helps, that even other kids reinforce like, man, I wish I got to do that more. Right. Because I mean, what kid doesn't want to go and have fun times? Not that it's always fun. Like, our girls definitely don't love going grocery shopping, but like they also know that would happen no matter what we were
where
doing,
we live,
right? Like I think there's just some, and we have those conversations, like, hey, this wouldn't change anything. I think the other thing too, like our kids definitely didn't really have much of a say. I mean, when we were initially thinking about doing this, we definitely kind of like put out feelers and what do you guys think? And I don't think no kid can wrap their head around what it's really going to be like. I mean, we couldn't even wrap our head around it. But our kids definitely would do have a voice. Like if there was a continued voice saying, I hate, like I'm not loving this. I just want different. We would definitely take that into consideration. And they know that.
Yep.
And that's why we don't ask them, how long should we do this? Because that's ultimately our decision. But we do get a pulse on where they're at. And they know that we're doing that. Like how is this for you guys? We'll ask little questions like, how long do you want to do this for? Or they'll just say it because they know that we're wondering, Like our oldest is old enough to know that she knows that she has a voice. And so like Taryn mentioned the comment, like, I want to do this for however many more years. She still doesn't have a concept for what the next 4 years, I think, actually looks like, or whatever she said to you.
Yeah.
You know, like she's going to be hitting puberty, you know, like there's so many like changes that she's going to be experiencing. I don't think she can actually wrap her head around that. And yet she's still voicing. So we take everything with a grain of salt. You know, they don't really run the show, but they have a voice in the ultimate. I don't know. It's, you know, because I'm sure that comes up. Like, we're not just like forcing our kids and they bend to our will. But we ultimately, they know that we have the final say. They know that we're going to make the best decision for them. And when there's hard times, we tell them, like, you know, this is what we think is good right now. And we're doing this for this reason. And I know you love all these things and you're just having a hard day. And, you know, but we'll listen to them. I don't know. Just wanted to add that.
No, I think that's really, really important to add, because it's not, obviously we know you're not forcing your kids, but people can take their things the way they, pardon me?
We did kind of force them.
Well, but you have to at some point.
Yeah.
I have 2 more questions, Melissa, and then we'll wrap up. But do you have anything that you want to say before I ask?
No, you can go ahead, because I have some other things that I was thinking of, but it would, I could sit here and talk to you guys for another 3 hours, but you know.
So could I know I have a lot, but I'm like,
the Little Mermaid only goes so long.
I know. Soon it's gonna be over.
This is the hard part about podcasts, is sometimes you get people and like, you're done, you're like, okay, we're done, let's move on. But other times, often you have people, you're like, we could literally record for 6 hours and it would be great, but who's gonna listen? So what I want to ask is, tying it back into the last 2 times you guys have gone down. Sorry, actually, hold on. I want to wrap up what you were just saying, and then I'll go into my question. Yeah, I think that's really beautiful that you guys are taking your kids' voices into the decision-making process. It's not like that they're making the decision, like you said, Jono, but listening. And I think that that's something that many people are really good at, and many people forget, is that your kids can have a voice. It doesn't mean that they have a say and they're like, their vote makes the decision, but their voice can impact the way the decision's going to go. And I think that that's really, really cool that you guys do that with your kids and the whole decision-making with everything that you're doing on your living nomadic lifestyle. It's beautiful. So what I want to ask is, with your destinations, the last 2 times you guys have gone down, I believe you've stuck more to like the California, Nevada, Arizona area. The next time you guys go down, do you plan on going that same route? Do you have other plans for the routes you want to go?
Yeah, good question. It's a little bit unknown sometimes, as it is with our travels, but for us, why we've gone west the most, just for people that don't know the whole boondocking, it is easier to do in the west. So when we go down south, we stay on what's called BLM land, and that's Crown land up here in Canada.
Bureau of Land Management.
That's what it stands for. And so it's, we actually, what did we spend? It was like, in the last year, we only did $200 or so on camping. The rest is all free, because we just stay on this land that, is meant to be used freely. And so the west is really easy to do that. That's why California is not as easy. Arizona.
A lot of California, the coast
is hard.
I mean, obviously more dense areas are more challenging. Yeah.
But Arizona for sure, and Utah, like those areas have so much of it. And so that's why we've done the last 2 winters there. Just getting our bearings, and it's been very, smooth. So now next year.
Well, and also those 4 Southwest states, it's not only what Taryn's saying, but they're also, that's just where things are more mild.
Yeah, for winter.
You know, I mean, last year we were very slow coming up the coast, going through like Oregon, Washington, that kind of thing. And then, to start our journey down to the US this year, we kind of were a little bit more interior, but still in that those western states, Washington, Oregon, and California. And we kind of went inland down, like seeing, Bend and the different, like
Crater Lake, Yosemite,
Redding, Sacramento. And so, we kind of have
hit all that,
a lot. There's just some places that are more difficult because of like, when we are wanting to be down there, they're cold, like Idaho, Montana, We've seen a lot of Montana anyway, just neighboring where we live, Alberta, or where we're from. What also inhibits us a lot is like there's a time constraint on, you know, essentially snowbirding. You know, it's not super complicated, but call it 6 months. And you got to be mindful. If you go over, you know, you've got to make sure you're filing the right paperwork with the IRS, or they're going to come after you for money. And as they should, you're using their stuff. But
this all comes into our plan.
If we were U.S. citizens, things would look much different. A lot of people who live this way that are U.S. citizens, they follow just like the 70s, you know, like the very tempered temperatures. So they're somewhere in the south in the winter, and then they kind of move into the north for the summer. And we just don't have that luxury.
As Canadians, we have to always come back to Canada.
Yeah.
And then, so that's why we choose winter to go down there. And so weather impacts us. So that's why that area is where we would go the most. But
we could be up here. We could be in the north in the winter. We could be in the cold place in the winter.
We
just don't want to do that.
No.
You know, we did build this thing so we could, but
Just
we have
in
no
case.
desire to do that. It's obviously not as, you know, your feet get cold. No matter how much you insulate, it's just never going to be like if you have like this very modern home that is, you know, very tempered for winter in Canada.
But what I was saying is that we're trying to make plans for next year, because we're like, we could just do the West again, because like, but we've done 2 winters and we've done everything. I mean, there's a few
lot,
national parks we haven't hit there yet, but so we might do it again. But then, because we made some friends at our schoolie event, and they are actually they have lands. This is what happens: is you meet people on the road. A lot of people's next goal and desire is to homestead. A lot of them, and it is to find land. And like they're doing schoolie life to find the perfect land. It's like taking back the pioneer times, and they're going west and they're looking for land. I don't know. It's just kind of cool. So this couple found their land, and it's in East Texas, and they've already been in conversation with us that come visit us in the fall. We have land that you can park on. And so that's sort of pulling us in that direction, that maybe the fall we go to East Texas. His brother's moving to Nashville.
We were going to
we might go there.
We were going to do the whole East Coast, you know, like drive across Canada, then make our way down the East Coast slowly. But it's an election year in the US, and no matter what happens, apparently it's going to get weird. And so the last place we want to be, I mean, we'd be going through, you know, New York, Washington, like all those areas, right smack dab in the middle of their crazy town time.
We might wait on that.
So, you know, and we all know, like, no matter what happens, it's gonna be crazy.
Yeah.
And so we're just like, you know, maybe we'll save that.
Because we could go to Texas. So that's the thing. Once we're in the middle, we have a decision to make in the fall. We'll go to the middle, hang out with our friends, and then it's like.
But I want to do the South.
Yeah, we have to decide: are we going to winter in Florida next year, or do we go back to the West? We just haven't decided yet. But that's the beauty of it. It's like we'll know as we get closer what makes sense. And then if we did do Florida, maybe in the spring we go up the East Coast.
And if things get real crazy, you just jump into Mexico. Yeah.
See, that's the other thing. If we don't do Florida, after Texas, we could go down the Baja. We haven't done that yet. And go into Mexico. We could do that. So I don't know, Sammy. It's sort of up in the air. We don't fully know where we're going to be next year yet, but that gives you a little bit of a snapshot.
And that's the beauty of it. I remember when people asked you that last year, and you kind of had not quite that answer, but it was like, I don't know. And I think that's the beauty of it. I just wondered if this time there was still an I don't know, or if there was more of a plan behind it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
I think sometimes it's what's neat is that sometimes people are pulling us to like where we end up going. It's like, because I think that's what we've learned. Like places are so cool to see, but now it's starting to become the relationships we've built, and like people are pulling us to different areas, and we want to go see them in those areas. And
but we also want our kids to experience more.
Yeah.
Like I want our kids to experience the South. I love the South, where I've been.
Yeah.
And it's going to be so different than what they've experienced thus far. I mean, to me, the desert does get old.
Our girls are getting really comfortable though with the desert. So last was that 2 months ago when we were there? They some people might think this is parenting is crazy, but they were with a bunch of boys, and they actually caught scorpions. Like they touch them, but they were able to guide them into buckets. They found them under rocks, And they also found a desert centipede. This is crazy learning for them. And this is wild. I didn't even know this happened. They got to watch them attack each other, and the centipede ate the scorpion. And it was wild. And that's what our girls, like, they're just so comfortable now that they know how to do things safely. They knew not to touch them, but they also caught 7 lizards. They've caught a tarantula in the wild. So now we gotta go to gators.
The nice thing is a lot of the really poisonous things in the winter are in hibernation.
Yes.
So we don't actually have to, like, the snakes were starting to come out as we were leaving.
Yeah. So
that's the nice thing about wintering in the desert is like there are scorpions they are poisonous, they are dangerous, but they typically only come out at night, 1. And 2, they're terrified of you.
Yeah.
And if it's cold, they're slow.
Yeah.
So it's
you're okay.
The things you learn.
We've taught our girls all these things.
Anyway, they have more
I did not know that snakes hibernate.
Yeah.
You've just taught me something new.
Yep. We just found this week back at the farm, the girls found a garter snake den, and they're coming out of hibernation. They actually go in like a little ball all winter long, like hundreds of snakes to keep warm underground. And they're all coming up out of these holes now. And the girls, they've just been catching them. My youngest had 7 in her hand. She's like, look, mommy. She brought me 7 snakes and goes, I love you. So
Happy Mother's Day.
Right? That's our kids. They've become very adventurous through all.
I love that. Okay, so go find some gators. I love the southern states too. It's lovely down there.
Yeah.
Totally.
I love that about, like, I love watching that with your kids, because that's I think that's so valuable, is exposing kids to safe dangers so that they can learn how to navigate them properly, so that when they actually come across a danger, they're safe. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I think it's really important. I agree wholeheartedly with that. Not that it matters what I think. I'm just saying. So the last question I want to ask you guys, thank you so much for your time today, but the last question I want to ask you guys is, if you were to come across somebody who, you can answer this one of 2 ways. It's either, if you were to come across somebody who is kind of early on in the decision-making process of this idea of building a school bus, of living somewhat of a nomadic life, what would your advice be to them? Or you can go back to yourself at that time and give yourself advice. Could be the same answer, but maybe it's different.
I don't know what Jono's answer is. I know mine just kind of probably ties back to a lot of the theme that we've shared about community, and that if you're going to pursue this lifestyle, try to put yourself out there as soon as you can and make those connections. Open your mouth when you're on the road and say hi to people, make friends. I don't know, that for us, that has been the most, all the learning has come from every time we've opened our mouth and heard people's stories on the road. It could be sitting around the fire with strangers one night that we only are with for one night. The most beautiful memories have come from those experiences on the road by just putting ourselves out there. It's very uncomfortable at first, but it's so worth taking the risk. But put yourself out there and get to just know people and hear their story, and let people just impact you, and so you can learn from them. That's my biggest takeaway and advice, I would say.
Yeah.
Do you have something different?
So I feel like Sammy probably knows how I'm going to answer this, because that's maybe why she's asking me, but I don't know. We learned in other areas of our life, if you want to live a certain way, find people who are living that way and listen to them and have them guide you. Don't listen to people who aren't living the way you want to live. We didn't listen to the critics, as they've come up a little bit. No. We didn't listen to the critics of the life that we were choosing or what we were building, unless their criticism came from a place that they've been there and done that. It was you. I mean, I did it maybe not so directly, but I wanted to learn how to build a bus from people who had built buses successfully, saw it through. I wanted to learn, how do you live a nomadic lifestyle? Again, from people who lived that way. Some of that was pre us jumping into that, as we were building our bus. Some of it was on the road, but I don't, as an example, I don't like, our parents had never lived nomadically. I didn't ask them how we should live nomadically. Our parents had a lot of ideas about what we should do, and I don't fault them for their ideas. They had great opinions, but at the same time, they didn't understand. And like, I can speak to my own parents, and they know this because we had these conversations. Their idea of what we were going to do was go and live in a campground for 6 months, like other snowbirds. And we were like, no, that's not what we're going to do. And but because they didn't understand, they're like, we don't understand. And
they even booked campgrounds for us to make sure we were safe.
Yeah. Because it was just,
Funny.
they'd never done it.
Yeah.
They had never experienced it. All they knew was my mom's parents were snowbirds, and that's what they did. So that's what you do. And we were like, no, like, and it took like us showing, directing them to, here's people who live this way. This is how they live that way. And it is possible, and it's safe. It's just fine. And then we obviously did it, but like, we took opinions with a grain of salt, but we took advice from those who had, like I already said, were living how we wanted to live and had done it successfully. We took that as actual, like, helpful input. And that's the greatest thing I would say to somebody who is thinking to embark on this or anything that they actually want to accomplish. Don't ask the people who haven't done it. That is the worst place you could go. You want to become a musician, maybe don't ask a lawyer how to become a musician. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, if I say it, we laugh, everyone's laughing on this call. It's like, but people do that. They'll go to their friends, like, I want to travel the world. I want to live, out of a suitcase. And then they go ask their friends who've never done that. And what are their friends going to say? Oh, that's scary. You can't actually do that. And they'll list all the things as to why they can't do that. And how is that accomplishing anything? Whereas if you ask someone who's actually done it, they can give you the downsides just as well as the perceived downsides of someone who's never done it. But there's actually something behind it. And so it's not like you're just looking for all the great things and that's why you should do it. Like, they're going to give you hopefully a well-rounded understanding. And like, I mean, we've helped people explore this life. We've had conversations. We try and give them a balanced perspective. Here's the things you really want to think about. Because we also witnessed, that's the thing about YouTube and things like that. I watched people build out buses. They're 1 month in and they're out. And I think part of it is they didn't do what I'm saying. They actually probably didn't listen to anybody and they didn't think about anything. And then they actually get out there and they haven't really put any thought or planning into what it's actually going to look like. And they cave to the fear.
Having a humble spirit is the most, like, a teachable spirit is the most important thing that you need. And that's why I said, like, us learning to meet people on the road and realizing people have something to teach us and that we don't know everything. And like, we could, even when we were a year into our travels, we could start to get like, we know how to do this. And it was even meeting people recently, a few months ago, like learning another way, like another thing we could use to help make our travel experience even better. And then allowing them to teach us that we just like learned, like, people, you got to be humble and know that there's always something to learn, and you got to seek that out. And people, that are doing something successful, you got to seek it out. You got to initiate it.
Yeah. I want to add on to that, just grab your thoughts on this piece, is even if you go and find someone who's maybe done it successfully and they still can give you a negative connotation of what it's going to look like, is still don't let that be your deciding factor. Like, if it's really important to you, just because someone did it and did it successfully but was negative about it doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't do it. Is find someone else that maybe did do it successfully, or just get some advice to learn from their negative opinion and still do it yourself.
Totally.
Yeah.
I love it.
Cool.
I love that so much.
Thank you so much, Jono and Taryn. Yes. So fun to talk to you. Honestly, could keep going for forever, but
thanks for the great questions.
No, it's fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Awesome. I'm so happy I got to meet you guys. I've heard so much about you, and I'm just so happy that we got to have this conversation. Thank you for spending your
I love
evening
your
with us.
energy, Melissa. It's so fun. You just fed us. Like, that's what I.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. To help support the growth of this podcast, please feel free to leave us a review, follow us on socials, or recommend us to your friends. Your support honestly means the world to us. With love, Sammy